They first noticed the sky was darker than usual, even though dawn should have been near. A rolling layer of clouds hung low above the Sea of Galilee, shifting into shapes that gave Peter the uneasy feeling of monstrous faces swirling overhead. The boat rocked violently in the churning waves. A few disciples began muttering worried prayers, though no one dared speak too loudly. They had witnessed Jesus calm a ferocious storm just hours before, and none wished to admit they still felt a sliver of fear in their hearts. Before we continue the story, if you want to feel the love of Jesus Christ in your heart, type Amen in the comments and subscribe to the channel. Jesus stood at the bow, gazing into the distance. His hair was damp from the night spray. He had been awake far longer than any of them, yet he showed no weariness. A holy tranquility emanated from him, as though creation itself should have recognized his presence. Despite the faint light that crept over the horizon, their destination remained unclear. A stretch of rocky shore rumored to lie opposite the region of Galilee. Local fishermen seldom sailed here, claiming strange shrieks sometimes echoed from the cliffs. The place was known as the territory of the Gerasenes, or Gadarenes, as some called it, mainly Gentile folk who tended large herds of animals, including swine. Most of the disciples had never been among those pig-keeping Gentiles. The thought of an unclean land dotted with tombs in the rocky hillside made them uneasy. The boat lurched, scraping on something beneath the water until at last it glided onto a patch of gravelly shore. "Master," whispered John, stepping close to Jesus. "Why here? You spoke so clearly of ministering to our own people first. But this place—" Jesus turned, regarding him with gentle eyes. "Because, John," he replied softly, "there is a man here who needs me." A stiff wind blew in from the cliffs above, carrying a peculiar odor like decaying leaves mingled with damp earth. The hillside revealed cave-like tombs carved into the rock, a resting place for the dead. Andrew rubbed his arms, feeling goosebumps as he peered at one of the dark entrances. The disciples disembarked and began to gather nets and supplies, though they weren't sure how long they would stay. Most felt a tug of dread. They were fishermen, city dwellers. This silent place of tombs and steep slopes was alien. Suddenly, from among the rock-cut tombs, there rose a haunting shriek. It was sharp, pained, echoing against the limestone. James gripped the side of the boat, his heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" Philip asked, his voice low. "Yes," Matthew answered, swallowing. "Sounded like pure torment." Peter stepped forward with a protective posture. Although he was as frightened as anyone, he disliked feeling powerless. "We should—" Before he finished, the figure appeared. A man so gaunt and disheveled, he barely looked human. Torn scraps of cloth hung from his body, but most of him was naked, streaked with dirt and blood. Around his wrists clinked ragged remains of metal shackles. He stumbled forward as if compelled by a force beyond himself. Even from a distance, the disciples could see his eyes rolling wild with anguish. A hush seized them. Then the man let out a roar, half plea, half threat, and sprinted in their direction, feet slapping unevenly on the rocky ground. A few of the disciples reflexively backed up, fists clenched, while others froze. The man's wail was full of torment, like an animal cornered and wounded. Jesus raised a hand in calm authority. Though every muscle in the demoniac's body twitched as if ready to lunge, instead he collapsed to his knees in front of the Lord, trembling. The disciples, uncertain, watched from a short distance. "What have you to do with me, Jesus?" the man rasped, voice choking as though multiple tongues spoke at once. "Son of the Most High God?" The words came out in a terrible jumble, switching from me to us and back. His face contorted. Andrew felt sweat bead on his forehead. Even in Galilee, they had seen Jesus cast out demons before, but never anything this terrifying. "Have you come to torment us?" the man howled. "Before the appointed time?" Jesus' expression was both resolute and compassionate. "Come out of him," he said firmly, voice resonating with a power that seemed to settle the air. Then he asked, "What is your name?" The man threw back his head, shoulders convulsing. A guttural voice replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." At that revelation, more than one disciple gasped. A legion was a Roman army unit numbering thousands. Could this pitiful soul truly be under the grip of so many evil spirits? Yet the poor man's shredded arms and constant twitch told the story of unrelenting torment. In that moment, Jesus' gaze never wavered. An indescribable authority poured from him, a silent might that overshadowed the swirling madness in the man. The demoniac shuddered, his breath ragged. "Please!" the voices pleaded. "Do not cast us into the abyss! Let us go into the swine!" Only then did the disciples notice, farther up the slope, a large herd of pigs, hundreds, possibly thousands, grazing under the watch of a few startled herdsmen. The wind carried the acrid smell of livestock down the hill. Peter swallowed hard, recalling the unclean status of pigs in Jewish law. He wondered what it meant for demons to take refuge in such unclean creatures. But Jesus' calm voice broke the tension. "Go," he said simply. Immediately, the man let out a gasping moan and collapsed forward, as though something invisible had torn itself away from him. At that same instant, a frenzied commotion erupted uphill. The pigs began squealing in terror, short, frenzied squeals that pierced the morning air. Hooves thundered as the entire herd bolted in one direction, eyes wild with panic. The herdsmen could do nothing but shout in confusion. In a heartbeat, hundreds upon hundreds of pigs stormed headlong down the steep slope. Their squeals merged into an awful din as they hurtled toward the water, unstoppable. Some scrambled over others, tumbling in a mass of thrashing limbs until one after another plunged into the sea below. A deafening splash, then a dreadful silence as waves churned with the weight of drowning animals. The disciples stared in shock, hearts pounding. It was as if they had witnessed a small war. Within moments, the water near the shore was clouded with movement. Pigs drowning, carried under by whatever frenzy had possessed them. Then everything fell eerily still, except for a few distant shrieks from panicked swineherds. Now all attention turned back to the once possessed man, lying face down on the rocky beach. For several seconds, not a sound emerged from him. Jesus knelt, placing a hand gently on the man's shoulder. Slowly, the man lifted his head. His eyes, no longer rolling, had regained a semblance of clarity. He blinked, looked at Jesus, and tears began streaming silently down his cheeks. "Where am I?" he whispered, voice suddenly different. Single, not the chorus of dark tongues. James found a spare cloak in the boat. He and Andrew helped wrap it around the man. As they guided him to sit, the man pressed a trembling hand to his forehead, as if awakening from a nightmare. "He's calm now," John murmured in wonder. Jesus nodded. "What is your name?" he asked again, but this time addressing the man's true identity. My name is Marcus," the man said at last. He shut his eyes, as though searching his memory. "I had a mother and father in Gadara. My mind has been scattered for so long." Jesus gently laid a hand atop Marcus's unkempt hair. "Peace be upon you," he said. "You are free." A small crowd had begun gathering on the hillside path. Villagers alerted by the herdsmen. Some had run back to spread news of this dramatic event. Others stood at a distance, alarmed by the presence of so many drowned pigs in the water. Marcus seemed faint. The disciples offered him water and quietly tried to clean some of his wounds, all the while feeling a mixture of awe and relief. The sun was now rising higher, painting the sky in pinkish gold, but the sense of spiritual weight still hovered. It was as if the air crackled with the aftershock of that legion's departure. The townspeople's alarm time passed, perhaps an hour, perhaps more. A number of local townsfolk and pig owners rushed down from the city. Their anxious voices preceded them. "All our swine, gone." Who did this? That group by the shore? They say it was that Jewish rabbi who cast demons into the pigs. They approached cautiously, but their agitation was plain. A swirling mix of anger, fear, and curiosity simmered in the crowd. When they finally saw the man known as the mad outcast, Marcus, now fully clothed, quiet, and seated at Jesus' feet, they gasped. Some recognized Marcus. A few recoiled in shock, for they had known him as a ferocious, uncontrollable menace who once terrorized travelers, broke chains, and wailed among tombs at night. Yet here he was, subdued, eyes brimming with gratitude. "How?" whispered a tall villager named Cyrus, stepping closer. "Marcus, is it really you?" Marcus looked up, eyes lucid. "Cyrus," he breathed, "I remember you. We used to trade wheat. He lowered his gaze, trembling. "I'm sorry for any harm I caused." The crowd stared. A few of the pig owners demanded an explanation, their faces set in grim lines. They had lost a fortune. "Who is this man?" one of them growled, pointing at Jesus. "What power has he used? Our entire herd is gone, drowned." Peter bristled, but Jesus himself calmly stood. "Your friend was in torment," he said, gesturing to Marcus. "He was freed by the power of God." A murmur passed through the group. Some looked at Marcus with a flicker of awe. Others, however, were clearly frightened. They cast uneasy glances at the water's edge, where pig carcasses bobbed in the shallows. "Look what happened!" cried an older swineherd, wringing his hands. "If he stays, what else might be destroyed?" The tension rose. Several began urging one another with low, frantic whispers. "Send him away! This is too dangerous! We can't afford more of these miracles!" Marcus stumbled to his feet, stepping forward with the cloak clinging to his shoulders. "Please," he said, I was the one in chains. Don't you see? He saved me. I can finally think again." But the crowd's fear overshadowed any compassion they might have had for Marcus. The villagers had grown accustomed to the idea of him as a hopeless case. In truth, they had been more prepared to tolerate an outcast in the tombs than a Messiah in their midst whose power upset their entire economy. One by one, voices rose in a fearful chorus. "Leave us! We beg you, go away from our region." Though not everyone spoke, the dominating sentiment was clear. Their eyes revealed anxiety, some superstitious dread, others outraged by the financial blow. A hush fell, and all looked at Jesus, waiting to see how he would respond. Jesus took in their faces. He did not scold them, nor did he force them to believe. Soft sorrow flickered across his features. At length, he nodded gravely and said to the disciples, "Let us go." They moved towards the boat. Marcus, heart pounding, watched in dismay. It seemed unthinkable that the one who had saved him so completely would just leave because of a hostile crowd. "Master," Marcus called out. He hurried forward, falling to his knees at the water's edge. His newly found composure trembled with desperation. "I beg you, take me with you. Please, let me follow wherever you go." The disciples paused as Jesus turned to Marcus. Compassion shone in his gaze. The ex-demoniac's eyes glistened with tears, not wanting to return to a place that had once shunned him. Tombs, old accusations, the glances of scorn. but Jesus placed a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "No," he said, softly yet decisively. "Return to your home. Tell your people all that the Lord has done for you and how he showed you mercy." Marcus's features twisted with conflicting emotions: gratitude, longing, sorrow at being asked to stay behind. But then he bowed his head. Obedience and awe overcame him. "Yes, Lord," he murmured, "I will go." A sudden wave of the crowd's chatter spurred Jesus and his disciples to climb into the boat. Slowly, the vessel pushed off the shoreline, the disciples' eyes lingering on Marcus. He stood there, the morning light catching the tear tracks on his cheeks. The gathering locals parted somewhat, wary of him, yet not quite sure what to do. Marcus was no longer the howling terror in the tombs. He gazed after Jesus, who looked back at him with a hint of a gentle smile. And then, with the lapping of water against the hull, the boat drifted away. "Farewell," Marcus whispered, feeling a surge of hope that overshadowed his fear. At that moment, the eastern sky brightened, rays of sunlight breaking through the ragged clouds, like the promise of a new chapter in Marcus's life. Although the townspeople insisted Jesus depart, that did not mean the mercy of God was gone from their midst. Marcus realized that he, of all people, would carry it now. A new dawn in Decapolis. Marcus stood at the water's edge for a long time, watching until the disciples' boat vanished on the horizon. The rocky shoreline felt oddly quiet without Jesus' commanding presence. Finally, he turned around to face the anxious locals. Only hours ago, these same people had known him as the possessed madman, little more than a beast roaming the tombs. Now he bore a calmness that startled them. They couldn't deny the change, yet many still eyed him with suspicion. Reclaiming a name. Clutching the borrowed cloak, Marcus walked carefully back up the slope. He passed the cave tombs where he had once scratched at the walls, cut himself with sharp stones, and shrieked against unseen tormentors. A flood of memories threatened to overwhelm him. Nights without rest, chains he repeatedly snapped in demonic fury, and the horrifying sense that his own identity was a prisoner inside his mind. But with each step, he whispered a prayer he had learned in childhood. "God of mercy, thank you." As he made his way to the edge of the town, a small group followed at a distance, neither welcoming nor outright hostile. A man approached warily, carrying a wooden staff. Marcus recognized him as Lemuel, a local caretaker who once tried to restrain him. "Marcus," Lemuel said, wariness etched in his features. You still remember your old name?" Marcus gave a hesitant nod. "I do now. It feels surreal." Lemuel studied him, noting the calm, the presence of mind. In that moment, curiosity overshadowed fear, and he mustered the nerve to ask, "What happened? One of the herdsmen swears you were possessed by 1,000 demons. Then that rabbi, he made them leave you." Marcus swallowed, chest tightening with emotion. "Yes, I can't explain the full darkness I lived in, but Jesus commanded those spirits out. And in an instant, they left." He glanced toward the sea. "Into the pigs. Then the pigs—" He paused, remembering the terrible stampede and the watery grave. Lemuel shifted uncomfortably. The mention of pigs still stung. "The townsfolk are upset," Lemuel admitted. "So many pigs lost." Marcus lowered his gaze. "I understand their anger. But if they could feel what I felt, those evil spirits devouring my mind, I believe they'd see that one life, restored, is worth more than a herd." Silence stretched between them. Then Lemuel cleared his throat and gestured toward a cluster of small houses up a dusty path. "You'd best speak to the elders. Some still fear you might relapse." Returning home. Not long after, Marcus found himself standing outside the home he dimly recalled as his parents'. It was in disrepair now. He had been gone a long while, and rumors said his mother passed away from grief. Neighbors peered from behind shutters. A pair of scrawny dogs scampered by, sniffed at him, then darted away. The only occupant in the humble dwelling was an elderly woman, Eudora, who had once been a servant in the family. When she opened the door and saw Marcus, she gasped, nearly dropping the jug in her hands. "Master Marcus, the gods," her voice shook. "They said you were lost, beyond saving." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. "Sister Eudora, it's me. I'm myself again. By the mercy of the God of Israel, I've been healed." For a moment the old woman wept with joy, hugging him to her frail frame. Then she stood back, wiping tears with her apron. "Come in. Let me get you something to eat. You must be starving." He hesitated on the threshold, recalling the times he had snuck into this house at night, half crazed, only to be chased away. That memory made him shudder. Yet now, he set foot inside in peace. The small table, the hearth, familiar sights flooded back. Eudora fed him warm bread and water while he recounted all he could remember of the exorcism. She listened in awe, occasionally crossing herself in the local manner. "And so," Marcus concluded, "he told me to stay behind, to tell the people what the Lord has done for me." He exhaled, eyes alight with a new sense of purpose. "But how do I begin telling them?" Eudora set her hand gently on his. "Child," she said, "you just did. One heart at a time. Start by letting them see you as the Marcus they knew. Only now, free from that evil. If they see it as real, word will spread." He nodded. Her words resonated with something Jesus had commanded. "Go home. Tell your friends." The mercy shown him was too great to stay silent. An encounter in the marketplace. The following day, Marcus prepared to venture into the town marketplace. Eudora insisted he wear a decent tunic she found stored away. It was old and a bit short on him, but it was infinitely better than the filthy rags he once wore among the tombs. As he entered the bustling marketplace, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Isn't that him? The tomb dweller? He looks normal. What in the world happened?" Local vendors, hawking vegetables, fish, and pottery, paused to stare. Marcus inhaled, trying to steady his nerves. He passed a fruit stall where an older man, Basil, was selling figs. Basil's daughter had once been attacked by Marcus in a moment of demonic fury, though she escaped with minor bruises. Marcus's stomach churned with guilt. "Basil," he said quietly, halting before the stall. I owe you and your family an apology. There were times when I was not myself. I can never undo that hurt, but Before he could finish, Basil's eyes flicked to the faint scars on Marcus's arms. "I used to hate you," Basil admitted in a shaky voice. "But seeing you like this..." Marcus nodded, tears pricking his eyes. "I ask your forgiveness. And please know, a man named Jesus set me free. He is from the God of Israel, the God who has mercy." Basil studied him for a long moment. Then he gave a single nod. "I don't fully understand, but I can see a difference. I never thought you'd look so peaceful." Marcus swallowed, relief mingling with sorrow. "Thank you," he murmured, unable to say more. He departed with the sense that something was thawing, like winter ice cracking under a fresh spring sun. Gathering a curious audience. News traveled fast. By midday, a small crowd had formed around Marcus. Some curious, some skeptical, a few still harboring anger at the pig fiasco. One bearded merchant demanded, "Why did that rabbi destroy our herds? Was it some trick?" Marcus took a deep breath. I cannot fully explain, but it wasn't a trick. He saved me from thousands of evil spirits. Those demons themselves asked to go into the pigs, and the pigs ran into the sea. Why would your so-called holy man allow them to do such a thing? The merchant pressed. Marcus pressed his lips together. He is merciful, and he has authority. Even the demons begged his permission. Perhaps it was to show the world the depth of destruction those spirits intended for me. Could you imagine if I had drowned the way those pigs did? That was the devil's desire all along. Some in the crowd stirred uneasily, remembering the drowned animals. Others softened, realizing they had not considered the possibility that the possessed man could have died in equally horrific fashion if no one intervened. I know many of you lost property, Marcus continued. I am truly sorry for that loss. But if you had seen the torment that possessed me, I would not wish it on any man nor any beast. A younger voice piped up from the edge. How did he cast them out? Marcus smiled faintly. By speaking a single word, the demons had no power to resist. That is how great his authority is. And then he told me, "Go and tell your people how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you." He paused, scanning their faces. That's why I am here to say, the Most High God reached into my darkness and rescued me. A hush settled. Among Gentiles, talk of Israel's God varied in acceptance. Some worshipped Greek deities, others a mixture of local pagan traditions. But they all recognized that something supernatural had happened. A new path through the Decapolis. Soon, word spread beyond the immediate town. People from surrounding villages in the Decapolis region, 10 cities with Greek and Roman cultural influence, heard rumors of the ex-demon-possessed man who spoke of the Jewish Messiah. Many were intrigued, others dismissed it as a tall tale. Marcus, however, felt a growing conviction to travel from place to place, testifying to what had happened. Though he was no rabbi, no scholar, he had one undeniable qualification. He had been changed. And so began his journeys. In each village, he found some who would listen. He told them how he once roamed tombs in a violent, hopeless state, how this Jesus of Nazareth rebuked the legion within him. Many marvelers demanded details. What did Jesus say? How did he look? Was he truly the Son of the God of Israel? For some, the presence of unclean spirits was not surprising. They believed in many gods, many spirits. But a single man commanding them all to leave, that was astonishing. He does what no exorcist or sorcerer could, Marcus told them. No incantations, no potions, just his word. People whispered that perhaps Jesus was more than a prophet. And so seeds of curiosity were planted. Certain philosophers in the area questioned Marcus carefully, dissecting every detail, attempting to fit Jesus into their existing frameworks. Perhaps he's a demigod, one insisted. Or a wonder-working magician, said another. But Marcus would only smile. All I know is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob acted through him. I felt that holiness. Evil cowered before him. That's no mere magic. Unexpected opposition. Not everyone welcomed Marcus's story. A group of idol makers in one city grew concerned that if too many believed in this Jewish savior, local temple worship, and thus the sale of idols, might decline. They mocked Marcus, calling him a delusional tomb dweller. In one city square, as he addressed a small crowd, a furious artisan stepped forward. "What proof do you have?" he demanded. "You talk of demons and exorcisms, but where's the proof now?" Marcus replied calmly. "I am the proof. If you'd known me before, you wouldn't doubt. Even a few from your city encountered me on the roads, saw my madness." "That's not enough," the artisan spat. "We lost swine, and you think your personal healing matters more? Begone with your speeches." He shoved Marcus roughly. Marcus stumbled but did not retaliate. Instead, he remembered Jesus' compassionate eyes. "I'm sorry for your losses," he said, breathing shakily, "but I cannot deny the truth. I was a prisoner of darkness. Now I am free." A murmur of protest spread through the artisan's supporters. Yet several who had been listening realized that anger wouldn't undo the reality of what had happened. A few escorted the hostile artisan away, while Marcus stepped down from the improvised podium, grateful for those who gently guided him to a safer spot. Opposition, he realized, would be part of his calling. Seeds of faith. Though he faced hostility, Marcus also encountered surprising kindness. In one market, a Roman soldier approached quietly while Marcus was finishing an account of his story. The soldier, introduced as Julius, admitted he had heard talk of a rabbi who might be the Jewish king. "A legion of demons, you say?" Julius mused, brow creased. "I serve under a Roman legion. We're feared for our discipline, our unstoppable might. If your Jesus overcame a legion of demonic powers, he's someone unique indeed." Marcus offered a respectful nod. "He's mightier than any earthly force. I was possessed by an army of evil, yet he freed me in an instant." Julius frowned, a glint of fascination crossing his eyes. "If your Jesus sets foot again in this region, I'd like to see for myself." Marcus smiled. "I pray that day comes. He told me to share what God did so that hearts might be ready whenever he returns." In city after city, reactions varied. Some were amazed, others skeptical, still others ridiculed. Yet Marcus pressed on. He discovered a fresh strength in each telling, as though recounting the miracle reaffirmed it in his own soul. And wherever he went, he found at least a handful who seemed genuinely moved. Those who recognized they, too, needed deliverance in some form, whether from addiction, oppression, guilt, or fear. Memories of the tombs. On occasion, nightmares still troubled Marcus, reminding him of the days he roamed among corpses. He would wake, heart racing, as if hearing those demonic voices again. In those moments, he repeated the name Jesus until his breathing calmed. Late one afternoon, while traveling between two cities of the Decapolis, Marcus found himself unexpectedly near the same hillside where the pigs had drowned. He smelled the faint tang of salt water and recognized the rocky terrain. A swirl of memories made his stomach lurch. "I lived here," he whispered, "or rather, I was enslaved here." Before, the place had seemed like a domain of death. Now he stood as a free man. The tombs still yawned in the cliffside, eerily silent, but no longer possessed by his howls. He saw a few scattered bones of animals near the entrance. Eerie, yes, but it did not grip him with fear the way it once had. He stepped closer to the tomb's entrance, where he used to hide from the living. Scenes flooded his mind. The nights he rampaged, the biting chill of stone, the rattle of chain links. He recalled the moment Jesus stepped onto this very shore, unwavering, pure compassion in his gaze. "Lord," he prayed, "I remember how hopeless I felt. Thank you for coming all this way to reach me. You truly are the Savior." A wind stirred, carrying a sense of quiet peace, as though creation itself gently confirmed that prayer. Marcus lingered a moment longer, then turned away, determined never to call these tombs home again. Spreading hope weeks turned into months. Marcus journeyed further, visiting places like Gerasa, Pella, and other Decapolis towns. He discovered pockets of people who had heard rumors of Jesus healing the blind or teaching crowds on the other side of the lake. Some asked Marcus, "Is this the same man who taught on that hillside near Capernaum?" "We heard he feeds thousands." Marcus relished sharing the details he knew. "He is the same. He had with him a group of disciples, fishermen, a tax collector, men from various backgrounds. In his presence, you feel the love of God." Many hungered for more, especially those who felt unworthy or burdened by guilt. Marcus sometimes found himself speaking to small gatherings in the evenings, reciting how Jesus spoke with authority, how he recognized the presence of evil spirits and sent them fleeing. "If he showed me mercy in my darkest state," Marcus would say, "he will show mercy to anyone, Jew or Gentile." Hope swelled in some hearts. A few local Gentiles began to pray to the God of Israel, spurred by Marcus's testimony. He knew from the bottom of his soul that Jesus' words, "Tell them how much the Lord has done for you," were being fulfilled. A surprise return. One day, while visiting a seaport region near the southern tip of the lake, Marcus heard news whispered along the docks. "Jesus of Nazareth is here again. People saw him land on the far side of the Decapolis." Marcus's heart leapt. Could it be that the Master had come back? He found himself hurrying along the coastal road, half sure that Jesus might appear at any moment. Those who recognized Marcus teased him good-naturedly. "Off to see your miracle worker, are you?" Yet soon, conflicting rumors spread. Some said the rabbi had passed by early that morning, heading deeper inland. Others claimed he was heading back to Galilee. Marcus caught only glimpses. He arrived at one village on a day when Jesus had apparently left just before sunrise. He spoke with a man who boasted about bringing his sick son to the rabbi and seeing a wondrous healing. "If you move quickly, you might catch him toward the next city," the man suggested, pointing west. Marcus raced on, but Jesus was always one step ahead. Though disappointed, Marcus felt a warm encouragement in each new story of healing. Everywhere Jesus went, crowds flocked, not begging him to depart as that first city had done, but bringing their sick, their lame, their demon-possessed. Marcus realized that the seeds of faith he and others had scattered in the Decapolis were bearing fruit. More hearts were open to welcoming Jesus. Full circle. Eventually, after countless miles on foot, Marcus realized that whether or not he physically met Jesus again, the mission given to him remained the same: to share the good news of deliverance. He had once been a man of tombs, cut off from community, devoured by spiritual darkness. Now he was an ambassador of life. By this time, Marcus was no longer alone in his efforts. A small band of believers had emerged, people who had heard of Jesus through traveling merchants or from Marcus's own lips. Some of them had personal testimonies of lesser miracles or changes in their lives, freedom from oppression, renewed hope, or the conviction to leave behind idol worship. They met quietly in homes to pray to the God of Israel and speak of his Son, Jesus the Messiah. "When we gather, let us remember the compassion he showed," Marcus would say. "Let us treat each other with the same love, for he reached even me, the worst of the outcasts." Often, Marcus concluded these small meetings by recounting the day of his deliverance. Though he must have repeated the story 100 times, he never grew tired of it. Each retelling overflowed with gratitude, bringing tears to his eyes. People who listened felt a stirring in their spirits. If Jesus could do that for Marcus, then truly none was too far gone. A deepening faith. Over time, rumors began circulating of Jesus' crucifixion under Roman authority, and 3 days later, resurrection sightings. The earliest accounts trickled down from Galilee and Judea to the outlying Gentile cities. At first, Marcus could hardly fathom it. "He raised others from death," a traveling Jewish believer insisted. "Why could he not rise himself?" As these proclamations gained traction, Marcus sensed the magnitude of God's plan. This same Jesus, who had rescued him from a legion of evil, had also died for the sins of the world, and then triumphed over death. The hearts of many Gentiles in the Decapolis stirred with fresh hope. Marcus felt it like a holy fire igniting across the region. Legacy of mercy. Years later, Marcus was known throughout the Decapolis as the man from the tombs who met the Messiah. By that point, other traveling disciples of Jesus began venturing into Gentile lands more systematically, men like Philip or even Paul in future decades. They encountered small groups of believers already prepared to receive further teaching. In many places, they heard how a former demoniac had paved the way, telling his extraordinary testimony. When younger believers asked about Jesus, Marcus would speak with affectionate reverence. He looked into my eyes when all I knew was hopelessness. He didn't recoil from my filth or the stench of the tombs. He commanded the demons to flee, then told me to proclaim God's mercy. That is who he is, Savior, Lord, and my friend. In the last stretch of his life, Marcus sometimes sat by that same shore, now free of fear, free of haunting memories. He would reflect on that early morning when Jesus stepped off the boat and changed his life forever. He would recall the hush as Jesus spoke. Come out of him, the legion's desperate plea, the thunder of hooves down the slope, and above all, the moment he realized he was once again truly himself, restored, forgiven, at peace. Two kingdoms collide. Looking back, Marcus understood that the day of his deliverance was a collision of two kingdoms, the dark realm of evil spirits and the kingdom of God revealed in Jesus. That short visit, though it ended with the townspeople begging Jesus to leave, was the spark that lit a spiritual flame across the Decapolis. People often asked him, "Does Jesus care for Gentiles too?" With a knowing smile, Marcus would say, "He traveled across a raging sea into a land of tombs to reach me, a Gentile. Now, does that not answer your question?" In those words lay the heart of the gospel, that no distance, no barrier, no depth of darkness is beyond the reach of God's saving power. Epilogue. A dawn unending. At sunrise one day, decades after his initial healing, Marcus stood on that same shoreline, hair streaked with gray. He gazed at the calm waters, remembering how storm-tossed they had once been. The tombs still dotted the hillside, but it felt as if they had lost their shadowy grip. Seabirds glided overhead, the air fresh and light. He bowed his head in prayer. "Lord Jesus," he said softly, "thank you for looking beyond my filth, my chains, my legion of darkness. Thank you that when I cried out, even in the voice of demons, you answered with compassion, not wrath. And thank you for trusting me to tell others. May your name be praised in every corner of this land, among Jew and Gentile alike." The sun rose higher, bathing the rocks in gold. And in that radiant new day, Marcus felt the presence of Christ, ever near, an unending dawn of grace. So ends the journey of the man once possessed by a legion of demons, now a witness to the unstoppable mercy of God. Even in the unlikeliest region, among tombs and pigs, Jesus brought hope. And through Marcus's testimony, countless hearts in the Decapolis discovered that the same divine power which conquered a legion of evil can also fill their emptiness with life everlasting. Go home to your people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you. And to this day, the echo of that command resonates through every generation that hears Marcus's tale, a reminder that no soul is beyond the reach of the one who reigns over every storm, every demon, and every grave.